Outer space. It's like no place on Earth, and there's only one reliable way to get there. The Space Shuttle, a reusable vehicle whose common practicality and extraordinary technology have redefined our relationship with the heavens. It is one of the most magnificent flying machines ever built, hauling more than just electronic payloads into space. The shuttle, fueled by imagination and courage, carries our collective hopes of better worlds. Throughout history, the wondrous appeal of flight has held a firm grip on our imagination. There are those who have attempted to approximate wings and let their spirits soar. These early efforts were resounding failures. Yet, in the first half of the 20th century, a fearless generation of amateur inventors tried to master the challenge of flight. In 1903, two brothers tinkering in the back of their bicycle repair shop strapped a 12-horsepower engine on a simple glider and achieved sustained powered flight. Orville Wright's first voyage lasted only 12 seconds, spanning a mere 120 feet, shorter than the wingspan of most modern commercial planes. But together, the Wright brothers lifted the world's perception of the possible and cracked open the skies. While the public applauded the accomplishments of aviation's first heroes, scientists were already making important discoveries which would change the nature of powered flight and propel the world into an uncertain future. March 16, 1926, more than a year before Lindbergh's solo flight across the Atlantic, Dr. Robert Goddard designs, builds, and fires the world's first liquid-fueled rocket in the desert of Roswell, New Mexico. These home movies illustrate the early potential of his revolutionary new concept, a fundamentally different approach to propulsion with an internal combustion engine that isn't based on a mechanical model. Dr. Goddard based his work on careful calculations, but often alienated his peers by suggesting that rockets would make a trip to the moon a reality. At his Roswell test site in the 1930s, Goddard and his staff built and tested a rocket a month. They came in all shapes and sizes, carrying scientific equipment and rising from the desert floor at speeds up to 600 miles an hour. Goddard's home movies also reveal another space-age invention, recovery by parachute. Few Americans realized the implications of Goddard's work, and his rocket research was greatly ignored. But in Nazi Germany during the 1930s, scientists like Wernher von Braun devoured Goddard's theories and gave the rocket its first practical application, the V-2 bomb. Constructed in exactly the same manner as Dr. Goddard's rockets, the German V-2s delivered explosive death to the British, destroying homes, businesses, great cathedrals, and the civilians inside. After the war, German scientists were interrogated about the design of their missiles. "Why are you asking us?" they replied. "Why don't you ask your own rocket pioneer, Dr. Goddard? We learned these things from him." Unfortunately, Dr. Goddard had died in August of 1945, just as the world was reeling from an explosive new future shock. Rockets facilitated the nuclear age. After all, if a nation were to use such a destructive weapon, it would be important to pull the trigger from very far away. Rockets give warriors a comfortable distance from the destruction they unleash. But in the Cold War years that followed, the United States and the Soviet Union competed to put a far more innovative payload into a missile, and the race to lay claim to outer space began. In 1954, white mice were sealed in a rocket nose cone for an experimental flight. This was the first physical evidence that living organisms could survive a zero-gravity environment. Meanwhile, on Earth, John Paul Stapp rides a rocket sled at supersonic speeds to see if the human body can withstand the grueling effects of space flight. His face reflecting the strain, Stapp is suggested to pressure 35 times his own weight as his sled is braked to a stop. But while the United States sets an agenda of controlled scientific advancement, Russia leaps ahead with an astounding demonstration of bravado. October 4th, 1957, the world listens to the faint chirp of Sputnik 1, the first man-made satellite, circling the globe every 90 minutes. And the race escalates. In America, a chimpanzee named Ham is wired with delicate electronic sensors, then packed in a rocket and blasted 150 miles into the stratosphere. Minutes later, he is recovered by Navy helicopters in the Atlantic, 450 miles from the launch site. Russia responds with Laika, a puppy sent into complete Earth orbit aboard Sputnik 2. Unlike the American chimp, Laika was allowed to burn up upon re-entry. In 1959, America recruits military test pilots as future astronauts. But before their training is complete, Russia scores again. April 1961, Moscow and the world hail Yuri Gagarin after the Russian cosmonaut becomes the first human being to orbit the Earth. America must respond. President Kennedy charts the course.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space.
1, 0, ignition.
February 1962, John Glenn orbits the Earth, and America holds its breath as a new frontier beacons the nation towards unknown worlds.
Friendship 7, can see clear back a big cloud pattern way back across toward the Cape. Beautiful sight.
Not all rockets worked to perfection, but while NASA understood that progress is built on failure as much as success, the Soviet Union seemed to flaunt its impressive string of accomplishments, including the first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova, who orbited the globe June 1963. NASA called her a Soviet Barbie doll, who was only along for the ride. But a Russian official boasted that she was a brilliant star in the cosmic firmament. Never before and in no country did women ever obtain such height. It would be another 20 years before the first American woman would experience outer space.
Guidance is internal. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 0. All engines running.
The dark mysteries of the cosmos, the extraordinary perspective of Earth from orbit, seemed to offer other motivations for the American space program which transcended the technical rivalries of two Earthbound superpowers. Suddenly, the world began to realize that the immediate goal of landing on the moon was part of a more profound journey for mankind. Two men walked on the lunar surface, so did we all. When humans claimed the moon in 1969, the Earth was a landscape of war and social revolution. But in space, humankind's most noble dreams came into focus. Those few fortunate souls who experienced outer space understood that there was hope in the heavens, that human beings need a relationship with the stars to foster curiosity instead of competition. A way must be found to shuttle more people into the province of space.
Well, then why we got a problem?
Put up chart number 4, please.
You need this small segment called the tunnel segment if you are not going into the space lab. Go to chart 2489A.
These men and women are doing the impossible. They are creating the very first reusable extraterrestrial spaceship.
What, you can cut the interface here and you don't need anything downstream.
Well, then why can't I go EVA too with 5
You can go out here. Let's go to chart number 7, please.
There will be no prefabricated parts, no instruction book. Every element of the project is brand new, poised on the cutting edge of science and imagination.
You are go for orbit, go for orbit.
It had always been NASA's intent to create a method of transporting people and materials between Earth and the heavens. But the project accelerated after the conclusion of the Apollo moon missions in the early 1970s. In many ways, the technology behind a space shuttle is more sophisticated than a lunar expedition. In both concept and completion, it is an unprecedented achievement designed to rocket into Earth orbit at a height of 350 miles, carry up to 7 people and 65,000 pounds of freight, perform delicate missions in zero gravity, then land back on the planet's surface like a glider, and be prepared to repeat the trip 100 times over. The first practical challenge of the endeavor concerns the vehicle's ability to withstand the 2,500-degree heat of re-entry. When the Apollo astronauts returned from the moon, their command module was protected from incineration by a heat shield of asbestos resin, which burned up upon re-entry. But the shuttle's shield must not burn away. Instead, a remarkable new insulating material was developed which can be used up to 100 excursions to space and back. With the weight and consistency of styrofoam, it is manufactured from an easily obtainable source: sand. The heat-dissipating property of the shuttle's insulation is so efficient, it can be handled while still red hot. The shuttle's 34,000 insulation tiles must be individually milled and fitted to their unique places on the vehicle, covering the ship's aluminum skin, which would otherwise melt at a mere 320 degrees. This requires that each tile have its own code number, which relates to the specific place and curvature of the area for which it was cut. Then each tile is sprayed with a polymer to avoid absorbing moisture and weight between flights. Like parts of a jigsaw puzzle, shuttle components from contractors across the country flow into the California assembly facility of Rockwell International. This wing section has come from Long Island, wheel and brake assemblies from Ohio, flight control system from Florida, payload bay doors from Oklahoma, and the crew living quarters from Colorado. From all across the United States, people have worked at solving the shuttle's construction challenges, from special robotic welding to using lasers precisely to cut insulation from around electrical wiring. There are 4 separate propulsion systems on the shuttle. Twin rocket boosters support the orbiter and the external tank on the launch pad and supply most of the thrust for blastoff and the first 2 minutes of flight. The main propulsion system, a cluster of 3 liquid propellant rocket engines supplied with liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen from an external tank. The orbital maneuvering system, 2 pods mounted on the aft, producing propulsion for the final stage of ascent, maneuvering in space, and retrofiring for descent. The reaction control system, comprised of 44 small rockets mounted in clusters in the nose section and in the 2 rear pods, which align the shuttle while in orbit. The solid rocket boosters are the largest of their kind ever built, 150 feet long, 12 feet in diameter, assembled from 4 segments of half-inch steel. The solid propellant inside the casing looks and feels like the hard rubber of a typewriter eraser. After ignition, the boosters will be up to full operating pressure in less than 1 second, with a combined thrust of nearly 3 million pounds. The 3 main engines can swivel 21 degrees up and down in the vertical position and 17 degrees from side to side to steer the vehicle during flight. The liquid hydrogen and oxygen used as propellant are stored in the external tank, a structure just over 154 feet long with a diameter of 28 feet, constructed of aluminum alloy up to 2 inches thick. It is actually 2 propellant tanks connected by a cylindrical collar called an inner tank. The forward tank holds 140,000 gallons of liquid oxygen at minus 297 degrees Fahrenheit. The aft tank holds 380,000 gallons of liquid hydrogen at minus 420 degrees. Before assembling the final craft, 45 tests at 6 different facilities were performed to make certain the propulsion system operated perfectly. But while the mechanical elements of the craft were being constructed and analyzed, the human element was being prepared inside the most elaborate testing facility ever conceived. The Space Shuttle represents the combined investments of 3 decades in space, a generation of scientists and technicians, and billions of dollars in hardware. It is important that whoever is chosen to represent humankind on a shuttle mission be equipped with intensive training in order to address any problems in space. That goal is accomplished through instruction on the most highly advanced computerized virtual reality device ever created, the SMS.
Well, the SMS stands for Shuttle Mission Simulator. That's exactly what it is. It simulates the shuttle mission. We can simulate ascent, on orbit, and entry. We've got all the switches to allow us to do that. They all work. They have models, computer models behind them to make them work just like the orbiter does.
Although a number of smaller simulators can focus on specific aspects of a space mission, the most important, SMS, is the motion-based simulator. This exact replica of the shuttle's crew station has seating for the commander, pilot, and 2 mission specialists to enact team training in an ultra-realistic environment.
100 gears down and locked.
All controls and displays in the motion-based simulator are active, with visual and audio cues provided for enhancement of the simulation.
Simulator takes a little getting used to, especially the motion base. You have to learn to put up with the motion and get used to the motion cues and be strapped in and tied down at the same time you're learning to reach for switches. And it takes a little bit of getting used to do that. After a few hundred hours in the simulator, though, you're fairly comfortable in there, and it feels just like you're at home, and that's exactly what you want. You want to be very comfortable when you strap into the spacecraft.
The crew station is mounted on a platform and tilt frame assembly with 6 independent servo actuators which create cabin movements similar to what would be experienced on a mission. Outside the simulator is an operator station where technicians prepare the training sessions and monitor the crew's behavior.
It's kind of funny, when you get involved in a simulation, you kind of forget that it's a simulation. You tend to mentally think it's the real thing, and you're thinking about it, your palms start to sweat, and you get nervous just like it was a real thing.
An advanced digital image generation program creates the high-fidelity window scenes, processing and displaying 3-dimensional scenes for all the windows of the crew station.
Liftoff.
Brake trim switch to inhibit, please.
Liftoff confirmed. Roll program.
3 at 104. LVLA.
Roll.
The system also simulates the images that would be produced by the closed-circuit TV system on the orbiter. This includes TV pictures taken on the cargo bay and on the remote manipulator arm. A team of instructors is assigned to teach flight crew. Ironically, instructors help improve performance by causing in-flight emergencies. Interactive controls are used to insert malfunctions and monitor system status. There are approximately 6,800 simulated malfunctions which can be activated either manually or automatically. A script is written to give direction to a simulated mission.
If it requires some coordination of malfunctions, we'll have a meeting, say 2 or 3 days before the session. I'll outline what the lesson is, and then from there, I'll let the individual instructors then start adding their inputs into the malfunctions that they like on each of those cases, and we'll outline each run in terms of each malfunction that's going to go in on that run, and we'll give it a time when that malfunction is going in and then the impact that that malfunction will have. And we'll end up with a script package for a particular lesson, which will have all the different runs in it. I try to make sure that they get a well-rounded training, and from each lesson to make sure that we've covered all the objectives that we can.
Can't go to SM because we got that one on SM.
Approximately 10 weeks prior to launch, the crew begins the final flight-specific training.
Bypass ISO circuit breaker on L4. Columbia Houston, Energy, ground track, and nav are go.
Roger, Houston.
The instructors apply a carrot and stick approach to the training dynamic, but the team spirit keeps the necessary instructional sabotage in good-natured perspective.
We started off a long time ago joking about the stick and the carrot approach, where if somebody goofs up and doesn't run the malfunction right, you either beat them with a stick or hold a carrot out in front of them if they did it right.
So it became a means of rewarding them for something done.
I know one of the guys brought me a carrot that's this big around that he grew in his garden out there, and nobody's done anything that good yet to earn that carrot.
This is in accordance with the traditions of SMS teammate. I'd like to show our respect and our appreciation, and y'all did a heck of a job, and I'd like to present these to you.
At Cape Canaveral on the eastern shore of Florida, the final assembly of the shuttle is quickly coming to a dramatic conclusion. First, the solid rocket booster segments are stacked on the mobile launching platform. Next, the external tank is lifted 350 feet above the ground and lowered between the boosters in a delicate and demanding 6-hour ordeal. Finally, the shuttle orbiter is rolled to the vehicle assembly building to be mated to tank and boosters. A massive handling sling holds the 200-ton orbiter for a final inspection of the landing gear. Then the shuttle is lifted from a horizontal to a vertical position, suspended over the fuel tank assembly, and lowered into place. This 12-hour operation is the most critical part of the final assembly process. As the completed shuttle rolls from the assembly building to the launch pad, the 3.5-mile crawl offers the team a moment of reflection, an opportunity to consider the profound implications of their effort. Sunday, April 12, 1981. The Space Shuttle, 14 stories high. A liftoff weight of 4.5 million pounds. Columbia, poised on the pad for its maiden flight. Its 54.5-hour mission to prove the practicality of claiming the space frontier. An American spaceship has never carried a human crew on its first voyage. Columbia will leave planet Earth with a pair of highly trained explorers. Commander John Young, with 533 hours in space, he is the most experienced astronaut in the American space program. Pilot Robert Crippen, this will be his first experience in space. "2,700 reporters and photographers from around the world are on hand to record the event. More than 600,000 spectators surround the Kennedy Space Center.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We've gone for main engine start.
Rolling the shuttle in the first few moments of flight puts the craft into a precise heading. 40 seconds into the flight, the Columbia is too high for the astronauts safely to use their ejector seats. This is the point of no return.
Roger, Columbia, on the nice ride. You're lofting a little bit, so you'll probably be slightly high in stage.
Negative seats.
Columbia, you're negative seat.
This is the SRB set flight.
Their fuel expended, the solid rocket boosters are released and fall back to Earth.
Columbia, you're looking a little hot. All your calls will be a little early. Okay. And Columbia, Houston, just for your information, you dropped those SRBs right on target, and they were floating just the way they ought to be, and the boats were getting ready to fish them and bring them back.
The boosters are recovered 150 miles from the launch site. Towed back to land, they will be refurbished and used again. On the shuttle, another main engine blast takes the craft to an altitude of 172 miles with 42 million horsepower. Before the main engine cutoff and release, the ship will be cruising at 18,000 miles an hour.
Columbia, Houston, you guys did so good, we're going to let you stay up there for a couple of days. Your gopher on orbit.
This maiden flight of Columbia demonstrated the Space Shuttle's ability to facilitate scientific experiments and satellite maintenance. Future missions were able to release high-tech equipment, cheaper and with more accuracy of position than ever before achieved. Earth studies were also enhanced with information gathered from the unique perspective of space. 500 images were captured on the first flight alone. Sand dunes 1,500 feet high. Islands. The soaring height of the Himalayas. Wide expanses of Iran exposed to devastating wind erosion. Down on the planet's surface, a special team of 24 vehicles and 100 people prepared to power down Columbia after its landing in the California desert. The public was on hand as well. A string of traffic 6 miles long surrounded the base as 500,000 people came to witness Columbia's return. Re-entry began at 17,000 miles per hour, 26 times the speed of sound. When it touched down, it would be traveling at 216 miles per hour, but the space shuttle has no propulsion power as it glides back into the atmosphere. It must land on the first attempt.
And John, we're showing you rolling right. Looking good.
Right, normal roll. Okay, the gear is coming down at 270. 50 feet. 40 feet. 30. 20.
10 knots, 200 knots.
40.
190 knots.
One
Speed brakes are tracking.
Down.
Fresh from space, Mission Commander John Young shared his jubilation.
I can't tell you what a tribute that is to the American working man and the American working woman, too. You can't imagine the variety of people who worked on this vehicle, from all walks of life, all capabilities and limitations. It's all due to their individual efforts. They proved that they can do the job. They proved it for the world to see. And I'm mighty proud to be associated with folks like that.
It takes more than 3.8 million pounds of highly explosive rocket fuel to lift the space shuttle and her crew into orbit. But once they have reached the heavens, the astronauts themselves are fueled by sterilized, vacuum-sealed, vitamin-enriched, reconstituted space food. The cuisine aboard the shuttle has evolved from over 3 decades of research and careful planning. When America's space program began, scientists weren't positive that human beings could actually eat in space. They questioned an astronaut's ability to swallow in zero gravity. Perhaps food would become suspended in the windpipe and cause suffocation. In 1962, John Glenn became the first American to address the problem. Aboard his Mercury spacecraft, he took the first tentative bites of freeze-dried snacks served up in squeezable tubes. The experiment was a success, even if it was only nominally appetizing. The Gemini flights in the mid-60s engaged pairs of astronauts on longer, more complex missions, requiring larger food packs versus squeeze tube snacks. The major Gemini innovation was reconstituting dehydrated meals. Apollo missions to the moon introduced the availability of hot water for warm meals with meats and sauces prepared in aluminum foil containers. Skylab became the pinnacle of space gastronomics because of mission length. More attention was given to variety. A special dining area serviced 3 astronauts at once, with a hot plate to keep food warm and storage for frozen foods like ice cream and steak. During the Skylab Soyuz mission in 1975, Russia and America had an exchange of cuisine, as well as science. Cosmonauts served tubes of borscht to the American astronauts.
We carry all the food we need into orbit with us. A lot of our food is just like the food you'd eat at home. Bread, tuna fish, peanuts, cookies. Now first, the orange drink. We go over to the water dispenser, put it in, close it up, and really all that did is put a needle into the container. We choose the cold water. And that rehydrates the drink. Need to shake it around just a little bit. That's the orange drink. For the Frankfurters, really all we need to do to that is just put them in the oven. This is our oven up here. Just slip them right in. Let them heat up.
On the space shuttle, mealtime can have a surreal tone. Astronauts often eat hanging from the ceiling or sitting on the floor. And plates aren't always needed as long as floating food is caught before it drifts away. Rounding up a renegade M&M candy soon becomes second nature for shuttle passengers, but very small pieces of unsupervised zero-gravity food could pose a major problem and put an entire mission at risk. That's why astronauts use liquid salt, which is mixed into their food while it's still in the sealed pack. Otherwise, individual grains would float through the cabin, harming machinery, the electrical circuits, or be accidentally inhaled. An astronaut's main eating utensil is a pair of scissors, but once a package is snipped, a spoon can be used. Food is designed to be sticky so it adheres to Earth utensils. This allows it to be flung with great accuracy through the spacecraft, or sucked from spinning silverware. Sometimes even liquids can be consumed without containers or utensils. Just as eating takes on new dimensions in space, so does sleep. Initially, scientists wondered how weightlessness would affect an astronaut's ability to sleep. Perhaps this strange environment would inspire bizarre nightmares, cause sleep disorders, and put the entire space program in jeopardy. The reverse is true. Crew members experience a unique zero-gravity relaxation. In the weightlessness of space, sleeping bodies tend to adopt a fetal position. Arms float out at shoulder level, knees bend. On the space shuttle, sunrise happens every 90 minutes. Astronauts often sleep wearing eye masks.
When it came time to go to bed, I'd gather up the liner, my sleep mask, and my music recorder, and carry them up with me to the flight deck. When I got to the flight deck, I'd crawl into the blue bag, float just above the seat, between the seat and the ceiling, and right next to the windows. And when it was time to go to bed, I'd put on the sleep mask, put on the headphones to hear some music, try to get comfortable and go to sleep. It was a lot more comfortable on orbit.
Mission 51L, the 25th flight of the Space Shuttle program, began at 11:38 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, January 20th, 1986. It ended 73 seconds later in a structural break between the main fuel tanks and the Challenger orbiter. Relatively few people saw the accident in which 7 crew members perished when it was broadcast live on national television. By 1986, the public had become lulled into benign disinterest due to the efficiency of NASA and the routine of shuttle missions that disguised the disturbing reality that spaceflight is dangerous. Impatience had grown at the launch site. The Challenger had been fueled and was waiting for favorable weather conditions. A long-delayed blastoff was finally set for a chilly Tuesday morning, even though overnight ice had accumulated on the launch pad. The previous evening, several operational water systems had been opened up and allowed to flow into drains, but those drains froze and caused overflows. Air temperature at launch was 36 degrees, 15 degrees colder than any previous attempt. T-minus 7 minutes 30 seconds. The ground launch sequencer begins retracting the crew access arm, and the last emergency evacuation exit for the 7 astronauts pulls away. T-minus 3 minutes 15 seconds. The rotating gimbals of the orbiter's 3 main engines are checked, then returned to start positions. T-minus 2 minutes 50 seconds. Retraction of gaseous oxygen vent hood. T-minus 16 seconds. Sound suppression water sprayed to absorb engine vibrations. Hydrogen igniters fire to burn off residual chemical vapors. T-minus 6.6 seconds. Main engines ignited in sequence. Thrust from the rockets bend the shuttle stack. When it returns to full vertical position, solid rocket boosters are ignited. NASA cameras record smoke emerging near the connecting ring of the right solid rocket booster. No one is aware that the cold temperature has compromised the seal between 2 booster segments, and that a searing hot flare is eating through the thin metal casing which holds millions of pounds of the most powerful rocket fuel ever blended.
Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
7.74 seconds, the roll maneuver is initiated. Special long-range cameras capture the side flare growing ominously.
Velocity 2,257 feet per second. Altitude 4.3 nautical miles.
Inside the main fuel tank, the liquid propellants spark an uncontrollable chemical reaction.
Challenger, go at throttle up.
One minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
The solid rocket boosters revolve in a chaotic spiral until a range safety officer initiates their remote control destruction 110 seconds after launch. The Challenger orbiter itself is not destroyed by the explosion, but rather by the erratic aerodynamic effects on the ship as it careens out of control. The crew cabin remains intact and briefly emerges from the fireball before it plummets to the sea. A large-scale search was initiated to recover the debris. 22 ships, 6 underwater vessels, 33 aircraft. Those pieces found first were those floating on the surface. Specially equipped submarines searched for the rest. Half of the Challenger was recovered in the effort. 93,000 square miles of ocean were searched at depths of 1,200 feet, with pieces sent to the logistics facility where they were arranged on the floor in their original position on the shuttle. An investigation revealed that the flexing of a joint on the solid rocket booster created a gap where 2 rubber O-ring seals held the explosive contents inside. Film records taken during the assembly of the boosters were reviewed for more in-depth analysis, but the photographs showed that the O-rings themselves were not defective. The design itself was at fault. The use of these rubber O-rings and their sensitivity to low temperatures and high stress were responsible for the accident. In the haunting silence which followed, America came to reconsider the space program. The path to new worlds was no longer an idealistic dream. In the aftermath of tragedy, the journey into space could clearly be seen as a profound evolution of the human animal. And like all births, there would be pain and sacrifice to be endured in the process. America understood that it possessed the technical capability to put the pieces of its shattered spirit together and soar back into the heavens. But would the nation have the heart to continue the quest? We all live in space. Like the shuttle, Earth itself is a large craft hurtling through the cosmos, carrying a fragile cargo of life. Half a century ago, Chuck Yeager was strapped in a primitive rocket and became the first man to travel faster than the speed of sound. In the near future, NASA will introduce a new horizontal approach to space travel, which will eliminate the volatility of blastoff. But today, the space shuttle has rebounded from the tragedy of the Challenger to become a constant and reliable technological workhorse. Discoveries made on shuttle missions have improved such earthly notions as food processing, energy systems, emergency medical care, and more. Perhaps the true value of the shuttle is that it allows us to look inside ourselves. From the great height of space, we're given a perspective that transcends the routine of our daily lives and focuses instead upon our spirit. We thrive on possibility. Curiosity is the food of our soul. There is promise in the heavens.